Hey everyone, I hope you're doing okay. I wanted to continue my video series of different ways to get into Warrior 1 or Virabhadrasana 1. So this one is my favorite, and I was going to save the best for last, but I've been teaching this one in my classes this week, so it feels a little more new and fresh and exciting for me. Then this variation I learned from Doug Keller. He's a pretty awesome teacher. He has a huge awareness of the body and how it works. So I definitely recommend checking him out if you get the chance. And this one I actually learned from a course, or he was part of the course, I should say, for sciatic pain, how to prevent it and how to work with it. And so this variation works with strengthening the piriformis muscle, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a shorter muscle in your glute area that connects your sacrum to the femur bone or thigh bone. And this muscle runs over top of your sciatic nerve. And a lot of times when the piriformis gets tight, it creates pain and pinching in the sciatic nerve. So pain up and down the leg, glutes, back, all that not so fun stuff. And so often, unfortunately, in yoga, we spend all this time stretching, but we don't always strengthen these areas that are weaker. So this variation that he taught was about how to strengthen the piriformis muscle. And I like it because it works a lot with your individual range of motion. There isn't like a set, like it has to look a certain way. But I also find that when I work with my range of motion at that moment, that it looks more like it's supposed to, versus me trying to fit it into a shape based on the traditional cues. So I'll show you this one first from hands and knees, and then we'll move to standing. And I like to use a blanket under my knees and a couple of blocks under my hands when it's standing. So I don't teach this one very often, but you may have seen it in my classes, especially this week. But it is my favorite way to come into Warrior 1. And one way to think of this is, so often we have these larger movements, right? We're so used to doing these big expressive movements with our body that we don't always focus on these smaller, more subtle actions, which I really love. So when we think of rotating the femur bone in the hip socket, right, it's similar to this action where I'm just rotating the arm bone and the rest of the torso stays pretty still. And this is easier to do. We have more range of motion in our shoulders, but it's a similar idea. Versus I'm rotating and then I just start to turn the arm because I'm moving as one versus actually just working with where my rotation is at this moment. And of course this is going to move a little bit. It's all connected, so that's totally okay. But focusing on stabilizing the pelvis and the core to support the rotation at the hip. So, all right, I'm going to move so you can see me a little better, but making my way to hands and knees. So when you come into hands and knees, focus on that engagement here of your core, nice neutral pelvis. And I like to start by sliding one leg back and just press the heel back so you get the stretch first. And then draw in through the core so you're neutralizing and keeping the pelvis stable. Knee down, toes pointed down. And then when you lift the toes up, you keep the pelvis level. So the more you lift the leg, the more your pelvis tilts. So keep that stable. Toes pointed down, and then with your breath, I like to do inhale to open, but inhale to rotate the thigh bone open. So if you see, it's not a huge movement. And then my exhale, I'll return to neutral or internally rotate it. So if I rotate it and do something like I'm trying to get to a bigger space, it's going to look more like that, where I'm just moving the pelvis versus rotating the thigh bone. And when I do that, I can feel the glutes kick on. I usually do this 3 times. And then pause, and then stretch it, and draw your knee in, and stretch out. And then return to hands and knees, and you would do the other side. Then coming into similar action from your standing, so your Warrior 1, coming into that. And 2 blocks. I like to use 2 blocks. If you don't have 2 blocks at home, you're always welcome to use a chair or a wall. So So I like the 2 blocks because it works on really giving you this length of your spine versus this kind of action here, which isn't bad for a forward fold, but getting a little bit of length so you're more in a tabletop shape with your torso versus your hips. So similar idea, you really ground through your legs. I like to isometrically draw my heels apart, so isometrically means I'm not moving my feet, I'm just engaging the muscles without contracting, without moving them to contract them. And slide the toes back to start. Guide your opposite hip crease back so stabilizers engaged. Lift your front hip bones, so nice neutral pelvis, similar to hands and knees. Knees point down, toes point down. And then start to lift your toes up. It doesn't matter how far they go. Again, if you lift it super high, you're going to start to dump into your low back. I even definitely feel a little pinch when I do that. And similar idea, maybe with your inhale, externally rotate the leg. So again, not a super big movement as you can see. Then internally rotate back to neutral. And again, 3 times if you want. Feel the glutes kick on. And then when you're there in your external rotation, you're going to keep that rotation. Start to bend your standing knee. And I like to, rather than just bend it straight down, because when I bend it straight down, my knee is going to come forward. So I think of bending it and then kicking my back leg back so the knee is over the ankle. I'm going to keep the rotation that I have in my leg, press down, and then I'm going to rise up from there. And from here, because I worked with the rotation in this hip, both of my hips are pointed forward, a little more equally balanced, right? So I'm not forcing anything. I'm again working from a neutral pelvis, working with just where the rotation is. So my glutes are engaged. And then you can add your arms. And then from here, to come out of it, if you feel like you'd like a little bit of glute stretch, similar idea. Lift your heel, lightly step it forward, maybe draw your knee in, stretch it out. If you feel like you need a little bit more of a challenge, you might take your fall over, you might take your arms down. So you got start to kick into those hip flexors and maybe extend your leg forward. You're still stretching here, you're just more actively engaging. And then you can lower and shake it up. So thank you for watching, and feel free to hop on with any questions or let me know if you try it and if you like it. So anyway, thank you. Namaste.